So if you're considering opening up a new 403b plan, but you're not sure where to go or who to trust, this video is going to be for you. In today's video, we're going to be going over what questions you should be asking before setting up a 403b plan. All right, so throughout this video, I've got 5 key questions as well as some follow-up questions that you're going to be asking the new 403b provider that you are considering. Question number 1, the first question you should always ask is this 403b an annuity or not? And it should be a yes/no response. If they go into any kind of explanation about yes, it's annuity, but just stop them right there. It's a yes or no question. Is this an annuity? Now, the reason that's an important question and the one I want you to ask first is because 403bs come in 2 flavors, annuity and traditional. The annuity ones are going to have something called the surrender period attached to them. That's the period of time where the money is essentially locked up, where it cannot be accessed without incurring penalties. If, like most people, we want to have access to our money, at least in the sense that we can change providers anytime. If something happens where we don't like them, maybe we switch employers and we want to move to a different kind of plan, having that flexibility is really nice. Those annuities don't have that option. So if it's an annuity, you're going to incur what they call a surrender period. Now, these periods can range from 5 years to as long as 10, even in some cases 15 years long. I believe Washington State limits them to 10, and there are many of them that push to the boundaries there. So you want to be well aware of if it's a annuity or not, and if it is, what is the surrender terms on it? The next follow-up question to that is, if they say yes, it's annuity, is the surrender period a rolling period or is it a fixed period? So what a rolling surrender period is that it applies to every single contribution that you make into the plan. So if I had a 403b annuity and it had, say, a 10-year surrender on it, and it was a rolling surrender, I put my contribution. Let's say I put $200 in right now. The next month I put another $200 in, and so on and so forth. If I wait 10 years for my first contribution, what that means is that the first contribution I made has made that 10-year period. So that $200 plus any growth that one generated is now free and clear. But every month after that hasn't been invested for 10 years in the company yet. Therefore, it is still in a surrender period. So that's what they call a rolling surrender. It's going to keep on rolling and rolling. Now, sometimes they'll have stipulations where the rolling period stops. So if you've been a client for more than 10 years or 15 years or whatever it is, then they might waive the rolling part. But that is something that is buried in many 403b annuity contracts. That's something you really want to ask the provider before signing up for one. Your next follow-up question to that needs to be, is there a special rule for retirement? Right? So if you're like 60 years old and you go and you set up for this 403b, you max it out, and then you decide to retire in a couple of years, obviously you haven't met the 10-year surrender period yet. But in some cases, some companies are nice and they'll have a rule that allows you to take the money out because you're retired and not have a surrender period. So oftentimes they'll have a period of 5 years. So you gotta to have the account open and funded for these 5 years before you can get this special withdrawal without incurring surrender periods. Every company is different. Every product is different. Remember, some companies have 3 or 4 different kinds of 403b annuity products. You want to make sure you're very clear on the one that you choose. Now, your final follow-up question to this one is, if they are recommending an annuity option to you, why are you recommending me to go into a 403b annuity versus a traditional 403b plan? Now, maybe the answer is simple. Maybe that is the only option in your school district. In that case, valid point. But oftentimes, there's at least 1 or 2 other investment providers out there that don't incur you, that aren't annuities, you're not going to incur that surrender period. So you want to be blunt with them and ask them why this over that. And what you're hoping to see here is that they can defend their position. All right. And if it sounds kind of funny, it's maybe because it is. Oftentimes, people that are on the annuity side are working for those companies, right? They work for Equitable. They offer Equitable 403b contracts. They work for AIG or VALIC. They offer their line, right? So that's how these providers get paid. They get paid a commission for you enrolling you in there, right? So oftentimes that's usually the leading reason why we're recommending that product over the other one. The other reason might be is they're not licensed to. Okay, and that actually goes into this question number 2 is, are you fiduciary and how are you licensed? Remember, not everyone is a fiduciary. All comes down to how they're licensed. So tier 1 are people that have their life insurance license. So it takes a couple of weeks. It's not a very hard test. When you pass this exam, someone is licensed to sell life insurance and annuity products. So they're limited to using fixed annuity products. They can't offer anything just to deal with the market in the sense. So these people aren't fiduciaries. They have no type of investment license. So they're the ones that'll come around, they'll do 403Bs that has, hey, it's the guaranteed 3% or 4%, right? This is a real common provider of this is someone like Horace Mann. You see them a lot in the Acme area. They have in the past, done a lot of fixed 403B contracts. Interest rates were actually pretty good back then, so they weren't terrible deals in the sense that they were offering, fixed 3 or 4%, which wasn't too bad. Given that inflation's super high now, you can't get out of that, right? Seeing that the market's gone up, we've had a couple run-ups of 20, 30% in the past decade. They didn't get any of that. So they were locked into that. And that's kind of what they got into when they signed up for that kind of 403B plan. Right? So those advisors aren't allowed to do anything else but that. Tier 2 are advisors that have something called a Series 6 or Series 7 license. This allows them to invest to a degree into the market. So they can't buy and sell investments directly, but there's like a loophole where they have a life license and these licenses, they can use things like variable annuities. And that is what most 403 contracts are. They're variable annuities, TSA type annuities. So these ones, they're allowed to invest in the market without actually getting an investment license and being considered fiduciary. So it's a workaround. Many of people go this route because it's quicker and easier to get licensed in this way and start making money than it is to sit for the actual investment exam. So just something to be aware of is that if they are licensed in this capacity, they're technically not fiduciaries, and that could be a big reason why they're pushing you towards an annuity 403 versus a non-annuity 403, because that's literally the only thing they're allowed to sell you in a sense. And then your next round are people that have a Series 66 or 65 license. These are your fiduciary advisors that have passed the actual investment licensing, and they can use the traditional investment options or traditional 403 products. They can do ETFs, mutual funds, individual stocks, you name it. They are fully licensed to help you in any capacity. Question number 3, you want to learn about the fee structure. I can't stress this enough. Fees are not the number one decision when choosing a provider. You don't go to Vanguard just because it's the cheapest one out there. There are a lot of other things that you have to consider. So don't let your life savings be dictated by who has the cheapest fee. Chances are you don't want the cheapest person, the cheapest advisor, calling the shots on your net worth or your future retirement, right? So not saying that Vanguard's bad in any sense. We use them a lot here as investment providers, but to put your entire life savings into any one of their products and not have the guidance or wherewithal to help you outside of that usually doesn't turn up too well. You end up paying more in other areas of your aspects, and you end up actually paying more in other areas outside of fees. So fees and 403B, very important to consider. There's usually a couple of layers to this. So you gotta remember, everyone in the transaction has to get paid. So I set up a 403B account. Whoever the provider is, they're gonna have a fee on it. If it's annuity, they have something called an M&E fee. And if it's not annuity, it's just like an administrative charge. Anyways, they're all gonna get their cut of it. Then you're going to go in and select investment options. They all have expense ratios, and that's how those investment providers get paid. The third tier to this is if you have an advisor, they also are going to have a charge, and that's how they get paid, right? So if a client comes to me, I have my fee that they pay the investment provider fee, and then any expense ratios in there. If you go in the annuity sense, those ones, it's kind of bundled, the M&E. So remember that you're going to pay the company then turns around and pays the commission to the advisor. So in the annuity game, you're not actually paying for your advisor directly. They're getting a commission from that company, right? And then you still have to pay the expense ratios. The trade-off there is expense ratios are typically higher, right? The company has to make enough in order for them to pay the commission out. So you usually see higher fees in the annuity realm than in the traditional space, right? So you want to be super clear on what the fee structure is before diving into it. Now, question number 4 is, what are the investment options? So when it comes to the 403B plans, they can range from 15 options to literally 10,000 options. It all depends on the provider you choose. So Aspire, one of my favorite independent providers, have like 10,000 different investment options you can choose from. So there's really no limit almost on what you can invest if you have an Aspire, for example, and they're non-annuity. You can choose to set it up yourself or have an advisor, so they're a great platform to use. If you go with what the people consider cheaper platforms, someone like a Vanguard or a Fidelity, those ones, they're product providers, right? They have their own lineup of funds. Therefore, they're going to limit you to only using the Fidelity funds or only using the Vanguard funds. And the kicker here is oftentimes, especially in the case of Vanguard, they don't let you use all the Vanguard funds. They select a few down for you. So you only use a select few that are in there. Now, it's more than what most people will probably ever need. That's not an issue for most people. But if you want to have the most diverse options to choose from, that's where something like an Aspire will come in. Because with an Aspire, they're independent. They don't have their own lineup. You can have Vanguard investments in there and you have Fidelity. So you can blend the two together. But if you go Vanguard or Fidelity directly, you can't blend the two. You're stuck with their options. So even if Vanguard has cheaper plans, you can't switch to the Vanguard necessarily or have Vanguard funds in the Fidelity account and vice versa. And so the way I look at it is if you want to have the freedom and the flexibility to kind of invest how you want and make changes without having to totally switch providers, that's where someone like an Aspire comes in. They're great. You can switch out of the lineup at any time. You don't have to fill out new applications and transfer assets. It's very simple. From a cost standpoint, sure, they might cost a little more than Vanguard, but from an admin standpoint, but overall in the long run, it's really not that much. When we go to the annuity side of the table, again, you're going to be kind of locked up depending on what that annuity allows. Those annuity providers only work with a certain amount of companies. So you might have 80 or 50 options in there. They're usually mutual funds only. There's usually not a lot of index funds. And if they are, the costs on them are a little bit higher than they should be outside of the 403(b) shell. So investment options, you want to look at, is there a good selection and what the underlying expenses are on them, right? Now, the follow-up to this investment thing when you're talking to somebody is, what is your process for selecting investments? Now, this is a good question because you're going to catch most advisors off guard. A lot of them don't have a set process of how they elect funds. So to tell you the truth, when I first started working with Equitable, I had my first 403(b) client sign up. I went to my manager's like, okay, what do I do with investments? He goes, oh, just pick a couple. I'm like, pick a couple? I don't know how to do that. I just got licensed like a week ago. And then he kind of went down and helped me out. But this happens more often than you think. Advisors aren't necessarily trained on all the different investment options, right? We're busy helping you guys invest and answer questions. We're not doing the research on all 80 funds and how they did last quarter versus the quarter before that and all that. We don't have time for that. Right? Certified financial analysts, that's what their job is. So like us here, we use CFAs to design the models ourselves. So you know what our process is? We actually have a team whose job it is to design the portfolios on your behalf, and we go off of their recommendations. So we kind of outsource that shell. But a lot of companies, the big providers, will go and they'll click just one box. Oh, this is the moderate fund or the growth fund. I see it so many times, it's not even funny. And you literally know this because you go to your account summary and it'll say growth account or fixed income account. And it's literally just one checkbox or one thing here. Or if you look at the pie chart, it's all one. It's because they only checked one mutual fund. And a lot of them will give the excuse of it's a mutual fund, right? A mutual fund is a collection of individual stocks and funds. So by having one mutual fund, you technically have a couple hundred or 1,000 shares in different stocks. Therefore, you're diversified. Please don't buy that story. And I guess on some scale it is true, but if you really want to be truly diversified, you need to have multiple different mutual funds or index funds in different sectors, right? In order to have a true diverse portfolio. I can't stand when someone comes to me with a statement and they have 100% literally sitting in the bond fund or in the moderate fund, and there's no description of what that is. How much has been cash? What is international? There's nothing. It's just the most broad statement. And that's what a lot of advisors are doing because they're moving too fast, trying to get more and more clients. Because when you're working on commission, if you're not bringing in new money, you're not getting paid. So they're kind of on the scale of moving through people as fast as possible. So that's when you're coming right into someone that does the annuity 403(b)s, that's something you might run into. It's literally usually less common on the other side, but not always. I've seen it go both ways. Now, question number 5 is going to be on taxes. So when you're signing up for a 403(b) plan, and you're sitting down with the advisor or whoever's helping you with it, you want to straight up ask them, how is this going to impact my taxes today, as well as in 10 or 15 years from now? Now, if they give you any pushback on how they're not a CPA and they can't give tax advice, then that's a big red flag. Every single financial transaction you make is going to have a tax impact on it. And if the advisor is not willing to help you determine what that impact is, are they really doing things in your best interest? When I was trained, I was taught put people into pre-tax because it's better, right? It saves them money in taxes, and people are about the now. Saving taxes now. Now, that's always not the best thing for people, as you can see in my other videos. putting money in a Roth typically works out better, especially for state employees, because they don't really change income brackets a lot because they have, the set pension Social Securities. So when it comes to tax questions, when setting your 403b, you want to ask them, how's it going to impact you? You want to have an idea of what, is it going to be better for you to go traditional 403b or Roth 403b, right? You want to have an educated conversation with the person on what's better, and not they should just do pre-tax because that's what everyone else does, or say, oh, you're going to save all this money this year and all this money 10 years from now, but how's that going to impact me in retirement when I'm not contributing? You should have all that there for you, right? Pro tip: the best advisors are going to ask you for a copy of your tax return so they can give you an educated response, right? So I don't provide any kind of tax advice or projections without first looking at someone's tax return. So all my clients every year are giving me their tax returns before we decide on where we should put any new money or any future money, so we can make educated decisions. So this should be a part of the questioning process when you go to open up a 403b, right? So summarize it up. You go into someone's office, or they come to your school and knock on your door and they want to set your 403b plan. Your questions are, is this an annuity or not? What the fee structure is? How are you licensed? Are you really a fiduciary, or are you just life licensed? What investment options are available, and what is your process for selecting this? And then you want to know how this impacts you from a tax standpoint. Now, these are good questions to write down. And if you're a member of my newsletter, I'm actually going to write this down in a PDF format, and I'll give it out as a freebie checklist. So the next time you go to set up a 403 account, you have this ready on hand to ask the advisor. So I'll try to get that out sometime in the next month or two to you guys. So if you're not very on my email list, I send these updates out at least once a week. You can sign up by going in the description below. And as a free gift for anyone that signs up, I have a copy of the top 10 tax myths that most people believe. So sign up to get on my email list, get a free copy of these tax myths, all to help you prepare better for your future. Now, with all that said, remember that your future depends on what you do today. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.